Ladies and gentlemen. God damn it!
Thank you everyone for joining us. It's the NFL Exporter live on Raw Radio. You're now listening to a special edition of the Exporter Sports Talk Show. Once again, make sure to join us each and every Wednesday night from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. And make sure to follow us online. You can catch us on Twitter at NFLExporter. That's NFLExporter. We're going to finish up our last segment and take it out to the AFC East. The New England Patriots came up one game short of making it to the Super Bowl last year as they took a tough loss to the Denver Broncos. But the Patriots are retooled and I think have a real good chance of making it to the Super Bowl this year. Quarterback Tom Brady had continued his stellar play. Last year had over 4,300 yards with 25 TD passes, only 11 interceptions. Certainly did not have a healthy cast of characters, but still put up those numbers. I think this year Brady is really going to get back on his grind. He's been hearing everybody else as the best quarterback, and it's been a minute since the Patriots have been to the Super Bowl, and it's been even a longer time, back since 2005 that they've won a Super Bowl. So I think Tom Brady still is hungry, still has the fire burning inside. It's really about, can his weapons stay healthy? If so, I really like what the Patriots have to offer. We got to start with Big Rob Gronkowski. Now the tight end has suffered a lot of injuries over the past couple years. I honestly believe he's one serious injury away from his career being over or being hindered big time. He has had an ankle injury, a forearm injury, he had back surgery, and so when Gronk is healthy, he's definitely one of the top two tight ends in the NFL. We certainly want him to be healthy because this Patriots offense is a different monster with him in the lineup. When you look past Gronkowski, you also have Julian Edelman, you have Aaron Dobson, you have Kimbrell Tompkins, and you also have Danny Amendola, who was brought over from St. Louis last year to replace Wes Welker. Was not able to stay on the field long enough to do that. He's certainly become a player who's been plagued by injuries. Once again, if Brady can have those players, as well as Brandon LaFell, a player they brought over, a wide receiver they brought over from the Carolina Panthers, I think there's more than enough playmakers there. We know Tom Brady has pinpoint accuracy. If those guys can stay healthy on the field, this Patriots offense is going to be hard to stop through the air. They also have some very good running backs. Stephen Ridley, as a guy who ran for over 1,200 yards back in 2012, ended up getting benched at the end of last season because he couldn't hold on to the football. I think if he can shore that up, he's still a very effective runner. And then Shane Vereen is a very underrated player. When the Patriots lost Danny Woodhead, he stepped into that role. He's great at running patterns out of the backfield. Definitely a huge mismatch against linebackers and safeties. Can also run the football as well. The Patriots have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, and again, if they can stay healthy, this Patriots offense is going to be very explosive and hard to stop. On the defensive side of the football, the Patriots look just as impressive. Last year, they got hit hard by injuries. They lost Pro Bowl defensive tackle Vince Wilfork. They lost defensive tackle Tommy Kelly. They also lost Pro Bowl inside linebacker Jared Mayo. Well, all of those players will be returning this year, and the Patriots certainly have one of the best front fours. When I'm talking about Wilfork, Tommy Kelly, and Chandler, who's become one of the best defensive ends at rushing the passer. He's up and emerging in the NFL. He'll be entering his third season out of University of Syracuse. I mentioned the linebackers. Jared Mayo is back. Rob Ninkovich is a system guy, and Dante Hightower is a guy who I think is really starting to get it in his third season coming out of University of Alabama. The Patriots did an excellent job in going out and getting two lockdown corners. They went out and got Darrelle Revis from Tampa Bay, and also Brandon Browner, the big 6'4" receiver who was with the Legion of Boom last year over in Seattle. And so if those guys can get back to form, that's going to make it extremely difficult to pass the football. They both do a great job in man-to-man coverage, and I'm quite sure Bill Belichick will be using that to his advantage with some great blitz packages. With Browner and Revis coming over, Veteran Devin McCourty now moves to safety, and they still have Patrick Chung. Like I said, if this Patriots team can stay healthy, there's no question they'll be right there with Denver at the end of the season, trying to get into the Super Bowl. Next, we have the Miami Dolphins. Last year, the Dolphins came up one game short of making the playoffs, were unable to get a victory at home to the rival New York Jets. This year, the Dolphins have a lot of question marks surrounding them early in preseason. Now, on offense, they have a new coordinator, and so they're trying to learn that system. Mike Wallace, their star wide receiver, has been battling a hamstring, so he hasn't been able to play as much. And him and quarterback Ryan Tannehill certainly need to develop their chemistry, because Wallace was open last year on a lot of deep balls, and they were unable to connect. We know that Mike Wallace, more than anything, is a big time speed guy, and that's why they brought him to Miami, to give them a vertical threat down the field. And I know the Dolphins want to take advantage. Their offense certainly can use some big plays. At the other wide receiver, you have Brian Hartline. He's certainly one of the best number 2 wide receivers in the NFL, more of a possession type receiver. Charles Clay is an excellent tight end. I'm really excited to see what he does in his really second year starting. Was a pleasant surprise last year, racking up over 700 yards. I think he'll definitely be a guy that Tannehill needs to rely on a lot. He's a big time mismatch versus linebackers and safeties. And then Rasheed Matthews is a nice young wide receiver I like. He'll be playing the slot position a lot this year. Certainly showed a lot of upside at the end of last year. Did well in this preseason game against the Falcons the other night too. And then when you look in the backfield, you have Lamar Miller. Now, I think Miller is finally going to get a chance to showcase what he has. Last year was just limited to 177 carries, stuck in a timeshare with Daniel Thomas. This year, Noshawn Moreno did come over from the Broncos, but Moreno is missing the entire preseason, battling an injury. And so I think with Miller getting all that playing time, he's got to get in cohesion with that offensive line. If the Dolphins have a hard time running the football this year, they are not going to make the playoffs. You can count on that. Their offensive line also has some issues that they're facing. Their star center, Mike Pouncey, possibly could be out for the entire season. We know the first half of the season he's going to be out for as well. Now, the Dolphins did do a good job in free agency. They brought in Brandon Albert from the Kansas City Chiefs, but overall, this offensive line has got to get itself together. The Dolphins did draft Jawan Jones this year in the draft, but cohesion again. You have a new offensive coordinator, a new offensive scheme. It takes a little time for players to pick it up. When I look at the Dolphins offense overall, again, they're certainly going to have to find a way to get an identity, because they don't have the pieces there as far as star power is concerned. Now, I really like what the Dolphins offer on the defensive side of the football. They have guys like defensive end Cameron Wake, who's one of the best pass rushers. Jared Udrich is one of my favorite defensive tackles with his versatility, rushing the passer and stopping a run. I certainly like Donnell Ellerbe at linebacker. Philip Wheeler is a guy who had over 100 tackles last year. Koa Misi is the guy who's got to step his game up. He's now been moved to inside linebacker. Brent Grimes was always one of the better defensive backs since his days in Atlanta. He's on one corner. They brought in Cortland Finnegan from the St. Louis Rams. I really like that pickup. I think that him and Finnegan are a tough, nasty 1-2 punch and can really give opposing wide receivers a difficult time. Over the top, you have Louis Delmas. I think that was a good pickup for them as well from Detroit. He's a hard hitter, a veteran guy, definitely brings leadership to the football field, but they're going to have to play the first 4 games without safety Rasheed Jones, who was recently suspended due to performance enhancements. So when I look at this Dolphins team, they certainly have their work cut out for them. I think that they can get back to being in a position to get into the wild card, but the AFC is loaded. It's going to be extremely tough for Miami this year. They're going to have to basically play perfect football. Next, we have the Buffalo Bills. The Bills, on paper, look to be one of the more exciting teams in the NFL with all the talent that they have on offense. Now, second-year quarterback E.J. Manuel, he has a lot of work to do. Struggled last year not only with being inconsistent with his play, but was not able to stay on the football field, being inconsistent with injuries. Now, this year, he has a good amount of weapons around him. C.J. Spiller is one of the most exciting running backs in the NFL. Fred Jackson is behind him. They even went out and got Bryce Brown from the Philadelphia Eagles. So the Bills have an awful lot of depth at the running back position. I know they're going to be trying to lean on running the football to take some pressure off Emmanuel. At wide receiver, they traded up in the draft to bring in Sammy Watkins, who certainly is one of the best young talents in the NFL. Now, I do wonder, because Manuel's in his second year and has struggled with decision making and accuracy, what you would expect out of a young quarterback. I'm certainly hoping that Watkins doesn't go to waste this year. This is a guy who, when he gets his hands on the football, is very dangerous and can score from anywhere on the football field. Also gives the Bills a big-time deep threat. The Bills also have second-year wide receiver Robert Woods. Had a solid rookie campaign last year coming out of University of South Carolina. And then they went out and brought in Mike Williams, a home product. Williams is from Niagara Falls, New York, which is close to Buffalo. Williams had a couple good years in Tampa Bay. I think he'll give the Bills a good passing option as far as having 3 wide receivers, because the Bills did lose Steve Johnson due to free agency, and Johnson had been the top receiver on the team the past couple years. Scott Chandler is a very underrated and reliable tight end, caught over 50 balls last year. I really think the Bills' offensive success is going to hinge on the offensive line, which the Bills have struggled in pass protection at times. And obviously, the offensive coordinator is going to have to call good plays and put this young team in position to win. And that can be a task when you have a second-year quarterback. Now, we look on the defensive side of the ball for the Bills. I love what they bring to the table in their front seven. You have Kyle Williams at one defensive tackle, Marcel Darius at the other. Certainly 2 very good defensive tackles. Mario Williams had a good year last year rushing the passer. He's still one of the elite pass rushers in the NFL. Jerry Hughes is on the other defensive end. He can certainly get after it. I also love them bringing in Brandon Spikes. Brought over some winning pedigree from the New England Patriots. The big loss for the Bills is second-year guy Kiko Alonso. Alonso finished last year second place on the defensive Rookie of the Year award. Had over 130 tackles. Was just a guy who was flying all over the football field. Unfortunately, the Bills will be without him this year. He suffered an ACL injury in preseason that could prove fatal. The Bills secondary really has to step it up. A couple draft picks that they've invested in over the couple years have to come through. We're talking about Stephen Gilmore, who they picked up from University of South Carolina, and also Leotis McKelvin. Both of those guys have underachieved up to this point, and they certainly need to put their imprint on this Bills defense. The safeties have played better, especially at home, but they have to be more consistent. When I look at this Buffalo Bills team, they certainly have some pieces in place, but ultimately I think their growing pains will continue until young quarterback E.J. Manuel can step his play up, unless he's going to play at an elite level, which we don't expect at this point. Last, you have the New York Jets. They're in a very similar situation as the Buffalo Bills. They have a second-year quarterback in Geno Smith. Now, Smith has made some tremendous strides in the offseason, has looked sharp in preseason thus far, but it has to translate over to the game, and that remains to be seen. Now, Smith last year was able to stay healthy, but for every good game he had a bad one. And so he's certainly got to be more consistent. The Jets tried to bring in some pieces to help him out. They brought in running back Chris Johnson from the Tennessee Titans. We know that Johnson, in his first 6 years in Tennessee, ran for over 1,000 yards. He still has gas left in the tank, so they brought him over. They also went out and got Eric Decker, the wide receiver from the Denver Broncos. Decker had over 1,200 yards receiving and 11 TDs last year in Denver, but that was with Peyton Manning, and that was with a much more explosive offense. So we'll see how those two new guys fit in, and if they can really give this Jets offense some much-needed playmaking ability. The other wide receivers for the Jets, Jeremy Curley and Stephen Hill, are not name guys. Hill is a speed guy, certainly has to do better at catching the ball, has had the case of the drops his first couple years. And then Curley is a tough guy, but he's really a slot receiver. So we'll see how that shakes out. And then in the backfield behind Chris Johnson, they do have some tough runners in Chris Ivory and Bilal Powell. Overall, like I said, this Jets offense is really not about putting up a lot of points. This is a team that's going to try to rely on this tough defense, play ball control football, and really take pressure off this young quarterback Geno Smith. So we'll see how that works out. On the defensive side of the football, the Jets, like the Bills, have a really tough front seven. Sheldon Richardson was the defensive rookie of the year last year, big-time defensive tackle out of University of Missouri. Really had a strong scouting combine last year, which got his name on the map. The Jets picked him up with their top overall pick last year. Came in and paid immediate dividends. You still have Muhammad Wilkerson at defensive end. You still have Calvin Pace and David Harris at the linebackers. So that front seven of the Jets is very tough to run against and very stout. But it's this Jets secondary, which has been its strong suits over the years, which is the area of concern. At one time, you had Darrelle Revis being the top cornerback in the NFL, and Antonio Cromartie at the two cornerbacks. Now you have second-year guy D. Milliner and youngster in Patterson. So those two certainly are not on Cromartie and Revis's level. They have a lot of work to do. And then when you look at the safeties, Dwan Landry is a guy who certainly has lost a step, but still is a savvy veteran. The guy that you want to watch out for is Calvin Pryor. The Jets also drafted him in the first round out of the University of Louisville. This guy has big-time talent and has already been making waves in training camp with his big plays. All in all, I think the Jets will probably finish the division last. Between them and the Bills, it really just depends on which second-year quarterback plays the best. And like I said, the Dolphins really had their work cut out. This is a division that New England certainly will win. That wraps up our show for today. Once again, make sure to join us each and every Wednesday from 7 to 8 p.m. It's the NFL Exporter Sports Talk Show live on Raw Radio. We'll catch you next week.
Ladies and gentlemen.